Nalange, Rome. The year is 897 AD. In the hushed, candlelit cavern of a cathedral, a congregation of priests gathers before a towering, empty throne. This is a courtroom. This is a spectacle. And the defendant is a corpse, bloated, discolored, dressed in the gold and white vestments of a pope. A dead man is about to stand trial. His accuser, the sitting pope himself. His crime, being pope while he was alive. This is not a myth, it is the Cadaver Synod. And if you dismiss it as mere madness, you miss the crucial point. Every chaotic system, even insanity, follows a terrifying, perverse design. This is the story of how the very logic of the church was twisted into ritual, and how a structure built to save souls became a machine that judged the dead. Every powerful machine begins with a single purpose: control. The medieval papacy wasn't just faith, it was infrastructure, a fusion of belief and engineering. It powered empires, managed diplomacy, and enforced a kind of divine law across a fragmented continent. The Pope wasn't merely a man of God. He was the spiritual architect, holding what he believed was the sacred blueprint of God's kingdom on earth. But in the late 9th century, that blueprint was corrupted by power. Pope Formosus stepped into this world like an engineer entering a malfunctioning machine, one clogged with greed, politics, and ambition. He tried to repair it, to apply logic and order to chaos, to build a church free from Rome's internal parasites, its noble families who saw the papal throne not as sacred duty, but as family property. To them, the papacy was a system to be exploited, an interface through which power could flow. But Formosus's reforms were like rewiring a live circuit. He crowned the German Emperor Arnulf, daring to break the Roman elite's monopoly over divine legitimacy. For a moment, his fix worked, but unstable systems always resist rationality. The machine, corrupted, chaotic, and ancient, began to revolt against its own engineer. When Formosus died, the current snapped back. The circuit sparked. Rome, once again, burned in invisible fire. 9 months after Formosus's death, the papal system booted up again, under a new operator. His name was Pope Stephen VI, but Stephen was no reformer, no visionary engineer. He was a product of the machine, a man constructed by the corrupted architecture Formosus tried to dismantle. To Stephen, the church was not sacred. It was an unstable operating system full of legacy errors. Formosus's decrees, his bishops, his alliances, all conflicting commands left running in the background, and those errors threatened Stephen's control. He didn't see theology. He saw an unresolved vulnerability, a flaw in the code of his own legitimacy. And so, he did what any paranoid system does when faced with instability. He tried to rewrite history itself. Stephen engineered the most grotesque rollback in human history. He exhumed the body of Pope Formosus, 9 months dead, and placed it on trial. On the surface, it looks like madness, but in the logic of power, it was perfectly rational. By condemning Formosus posthumously, Stephen could erase everything his predecessor had built, every appointment, every alliance, every trace of him from the living system. He wasn't attacking a corpse, he was debugging the church. What he created, however, was not stability. It was horror disguised as order, a machine running on paranoia, powered by death. The Lateran Basilica is transformed into a theater of the macabre. The corpse of Formosus is exhumed, dressed once more in full papal vestments, crowned and seated upright upon a throne. The stench of death seeps through the sacred air, mixing with incense and fear. Priests gather in trembling silence. The church that once crowned kings is now judging a corpse. A young deacon is chosen to speak on behalf of the dead, a living mouthpiece forced to defend silence itself. At the opposite end of the hall, Pope Stephen VI, red-faced with fury, screams accusations across the void. Formosus, you have betrayed the Holy See. You sought power that was never yours. The corpse does not answer. But in its stillness, its refusal to react, lies the most damning testimony of all. From an engineering perspective, Stephen's ritual was flawless. He built a system of control so theatrical, so horrifying, that it neutralized opposition through fear. Logic had been inverted, justice had become performance. And in that moment, the Church became what every broken machine eventually becomes, a simulation of its former purpose, running endless loops of corrupted code. The corpse, once a man of faith, had become something else entirely, a signal transmitting the message that power could reach even beyond the grave. The verdict was never in doubt. Formosus, dead, voiceless, immobile, was found guilty of every charge. His papal vestments were torn from his decaying frame. His blessings were revoked, his dignity dismantled. Then came the ritual of mutilation. Stephen ordered the sacred fingers, the three that Formosus once used to bless the faithful, to be hacked off, as if deleting a divine command from existence. And when that wasn't enough, the body was stripped and thrown into the river Tiber, a symbolic purge, a physical deletion of corrupted data. But history doesn't obey commands. Bodies float, rumors spread, beliefs mutate. Days later, the corpse washed back ashore, its pale form tangled in reeds. The people whispered that the river itself had rejected it, that even God refused Stephen's verdict. Fear shifted into doubt. Doubt metastasized into rage. The system began to short-circuit. Riots erupted. Bishops turned. Nobles fled. Stephen VI, once the architect of absolute control, became its victim. Within months, he was imprisoned, strangled to death by his own guards. The mechanism he had engineered to erase his predecessor was used to erase him. History would call it madness, but to an engineer, it was the most perfect failure imaginable. It proved that even the most divine systems, built on reason, authority, and ritual, cannot survive once their creators go insane. The Cadaver Synod was not just a moment of horror. It was the echo of a broken design, a warning that every human system, from power to faith, carries the blueprint of its own destruction.